All right. Well, now we have Kyle Kulinski on the show, host of Secular Talk. Kyle, how are you?
Hey, Anna. How you doing?
Good, good. I'm doing well considering the fact that today is, I don't want to say the last day that we have to deal with all this nonsense, but hopefully things calm down in regard to rhetoric after the election today. I was talking about this during the first hour of coverage. I was in Reno, Nevada yesterday for the Fusion show. And as I was waiting in line at Starbucks, there were two older white men. I know for sure one of them was from the Cato Institute because he was wearing a little, lanyard thing that had a sign. Mm-hmm. And they were just openly and very transparently talking about their disdain for minorities, for Latinos, for blacks, for Muslims, in the span of 5 minutes.
What kind of things did they say?
Okay, so Latinos have not contributed anything to society. I think they were specifically talking about immigrants, mm-hmm. right? All they do is take. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember verbatim what they said. Of course, the standard, Muslims are terrorists. They shouldn't be allowed in the country. And then when it came to black individuals, all they want to do is shoot and kill cops. Why does the media even waste their time talking about Black Lives Matter? Wow. That was the kind of stuff that was going on. And it was just so ugly that I couldn't take it anymore. And I turned around and I was like, we can cuss, right? I was like, shut the fuck up.
Bart in the booth is like, sure, I'm on audio.
I know that we're like trying to keep it.
And we also have Kyle. Sorry, Kyle. We got into it there.
No, I know. So the reason why I'm bringing that up, Kyle, is because I'm at least excited that hopefully after this election, there will be some sort of strong message about how that kind of language is unacceptable. But I don't know. I could be wrong. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that with Trump, there's a little bit of the cat's out of the bag, and there's no putting it back in. So there's some lines that he crossed where some not too bright people might think, oh, he's just keeping it real. But in reality, he's just keeping it savage. So, for example, mm-hmm. During the election, he repeatedly said, yeah, I'm going to bring back torture. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring back torture. I'm going to bring back waterboarding. I'm going to do worse than waterboarding. He even said at one point, I'm going to torture, quote, even if it doesn't work.
Yep.
So that shows you it's not even like he's not even trying to put like a veneer of intellectualism over it. He's just like, you know what, I'm going to do it because I'm vicious and I'm barbaric. And I think a lot of people hear that and they go, yes, like finally it's coming out. When like during the neocon era, during the Bush administration, they did it, but they put the veneer over it of like, oh, it's enhanced interrogation. But Trump kind of drops the act and he kind of thinks. He kind of says, you know what, I think that the United States, we're the good guys, and we're the good guys by definition, so no matter what we do is okay, no matter what our enemies do is bad. And he's kind of very clearly divided everything up into, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. And like you were listing there before, he launched his campaign by saying, yeah, the Mexicans, they're rapists, they're criminals. I assume some are good people. Mm-hmm. I love how he flipped it. Like a normal person would say, like, yeah, some of every group has criminals, but most are good people. He flipped it. He said they're rapists, they're criminals. I assume some are good people. And then, of course, like you kind of alluded to there, I mean, the Muslim ban, 1.6 billion people. We're not going to allow you in the country under my ideal policy. And then what's hilarious is that some people will, go on to say in the next breath, oh, but he's not a bigot. But that's like the definition of bigotry.
Yes.
He's saying, I'm going to keep out 1.6 billion people. And yes, I'm going to say it's close enough to ISIS and Al-Qaeda if you're Muslim. So that's it. Well, look, that is saying I'm going to use policy against all of them because there are some extremists. And this is kind of what he's let out.
What do you do with Muslims that are currently living in the country? Do you just go ahead and discriminate against them if they're American citizens? Like, none of those policy ideas make sense. And it's interesting because what you hear from the right wing over and over again, whether it be members of the electorate or politicians, is that they just desire the preservation of our Constitution. But they never really talk about what's in the Constitution and how we're supposed to have freedom of religion in the United States. It's not freedom of religion only including the religions that we like. It's freedom of religion. And, we, of course, have certain laws in several states that kind of ban anything that would harm others while you're practicing your religion. But nonetheless, you can't say, we don't like Muslims, we think you're all terrorists, so you're banned. That is not the preservation of our Constitution. That goes directly against our Constitution.
Right.
Torture, that goes against our Constitution. So it's just interesting because they'll say one thing and then do the opposite, and then they don't get challenged by it.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
When you said the fear of calling him a bigot, that the instinct to do that harkens back to what you said about the veneer that the people put on the bigotry that they were putting in there before, which is people are afraid to say the word bigot because bigot's such a word, you let it out of the bag. But the same instinct to put the veneer on it before is the same thing that if you I don't know, they're afraid that if they call them a bigot that they've gone too far and they've alienated people, when that is the wall you need to put down, that line in the sand to say this is actual bigotry. We need to call it out before we run the risk of having our words mean nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
if that's
right,
not
yeah.
bigotry,
And
I don't know what is.
And going back to Trump and the Constitution, Anna, what you were just touching on there, it's funny because Trump gets this, a lot of people view him, a lot of his supporters certainly view him as like, the last bastion of free speech, and he's a free speech warrior and crusader, and he's standing up against all these ultra PC college social justice warriors. But once you dig into Trump's history, you find out the exact opposite is true. I've said it for months now. The dude is a right-wing social justice warrior. He's the right-wing PC police because, for example, he sued Bill Maher over a joke that he made.
Right.
He sued The Onion over a satire piece that they wrote. This is the guy who goes around saying, I want to, quote, open up the libel laws so we can sue the media when they have negative things to say about me. I mean, if it was like a liberal on a college campus saying, I'm going to sue you because you made a joke that hurts my feelings, so I'm literally going to take you to court, everybody would be like, get the fuck over it. What's wrong with you? This is exactly what's wrong with the left, ultra PC, yada, yada. But for some reason, when Trump advocates the most extreme authoritarian policies when it comes to speech, he still somehow has the mantle of, being a free speech crusader. And that's just bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, look, Trump has been very clear about his disdain for the media, banning or blacklisting certain media outlets from covering his rallies. And so, again, that goes directly against our Constitution. The First Amendment has nothing to do with businesses punishing you for saying something that they don't like. It has nothing to do with average citizens being offended with something that you say. The First Amendment has to do with the government taking action against you because of your speech. And Donald Trump has made it clear that he's an advocate of doing that. I mean, he's already done that when it comes to the media. So, again, this has nothing to do with the Constitution. Donald Trump, I would venture to say, doesn't even really know what the Constitution includes, right?
Oh, no way.
So
Because it involves reading.
It does involve reading, and based on the way he tweets, I would argue that literacy is also a little bit of a problem for Donald Trump. But Kyle, let's move on to a little bit of your predictions. What do you think is going to happen today?
So I did a really long segment on this yesterday, and I have to say that I might have to amend what I said yesterday a little bit, because yesterday my prediction based on the numbers was Hillary Clinton 279. So I thought she was going to take it, but she was going to barely edge it out. And I said I wouldn't be surprised anywhere from 273 to 323 for her. Today, the forecast is a little bit stronger for her. So yesterday, Nate Silver had her chances at 65%. Today, her chances are up to 70%, which I mean, that's a big jump for one day. And what happened was the last round of polls were released, and I think the news that Comey cleared Hillary again on the email scandal might have contributed to that. But I do think Hillary might edge it out. I think it might even be about 300 electoral votes now. But here's the thing I wanted to mention that, I don't feel like gets talked about enough. Trump is putting up a fucking fight, and this race certainly isn't totally over. Mm-hmm. And I think he's been underestimated every single step of the way. So, I mean, we can go all the way back to before the primary. Oh, you know what? He's not even going to win a debate. Well, he won a debate. He's not going to win the second debate. He won the second debate. He's not going to win a single primary. He won a primary. He's certainly not going to, lead in the polls. He led in the polls the entire fucking time. Mm-hmm. He's certainly not going to be the nominee. Oh, fuck, he's the nominee. And then the very next sentence is what? Well, he's certainly not going to be the president.
I know.
So, well, if you look into the history, there have been years like this. If you compare selecting Donald Trump as the Republican nominee, you compare that to years like Goldwater, where Goldwater was chosen as the nominee. But if you then look at the electoral maps and all of those, one party picked a total weirdo or a totally weak, what you would conventionally consider as a weak candidate. If you look at the electoral map in those years, it is a landslide, an utter crazy landslide. But as you said, this year, it isn't going to, even if it is a landslide by our definition of landslide, it's not a Mondale year. It's not a Goldwater year. There's no way. In Goldwater's year, he just carried like a thin band of the South. Mm-hmm. Those days are gone. And I am racking my brain to reconcile those two things that doesn't involve some not so latent racism, as you were saying, the veneer turning into a dog whistle that no one could hear until someone came out and shouted racism. It's hard for me to preserve some kind of optimism about the American electorate in the face of this crazy, nearly 50-50, but more like 40-40 electoral map.
Look, I think the hardest part about this election was the huge reality check that people like me got. And the exposure of pure ignorance of members of our electorate. Okay, on both sides, by the way, but dominantly on Trump's side. Some of the field reporting that Jordan Sheridan did, where he went and talked to Trump surrogates or Trump supporters, their lack of knowledge. I mean, the one thing that stood out to me the most was one of his supporters arguing that Huma Abedin might be a traitor to the United States because she has a Muslim-sounding name. There was no evidence whatsoever, okay? But it didn't matter because, she has a Muslim-sounding name, an Arab-sounding name. That's what she said. So she might be a traitor.
So
anyway.
Anna, I think that's all true, but I'd also add one more element to it, which I think is really important about the Trump voters and, this populist backlash in general, which is with Donald Trump, you actually have a Republican who was willing to say things that there's no way Mitt Romney would have said, and not just the bigotry stuff, which again is true. He takes their coded bigotry a step further. There's no doubt about that. But he's also just way more economically populist than them. So, I mean, you listen to any stump speech he gives, he's hammering the TPP. He's hammering NAFTA. Mm-hmm. He even, on some occasions, comes across as more liberal than Hillary Clinton on foreign policy, which is crazy if you think about it. I mean, he keeps hitting her for corruption. That's not saying he's not corrupt, but certainly his rhetoric on the campaign trail is she's the establishment, I'm anti-establishment. This is a guy who, during the primary, railed against Social Security cuts. That's something that no Republican does, especially in the primary. They're supposed to unanimously agree and say, yeah, we're going to cut Social Security and Medicare. We're Republican assholes. He didn't do that. So this is a guy who, even infrastructure, he said, you know what, I want to stop spending money on the wars, and instead I want to rebuild our infrastructure here. So I feel like that aspect of it is something that has made Trump a more viable candidate than he should be, but also Hillary's lack of an effective response on that stuff has kept this race close. Because, what does Hillary do? I saw one of her ads yesterday. I was watching The Walking Dead, and during the commercial, they played her ad, and which ad did they go with? They went with the one where it's like, Donald Trump saying naughty words and cursing, and then we're all supposed to watch it and go, oh my goodness, I can't believe that an adult talks like an adult. So instead of hammering him in ways that make sense, like, oh my God, you just said, quote, we have to take out their families and kill civilians in the Middle East. That's crazy. Yeah. Instead of focusing on that stuff, instead of focusing on policy and highlighting areas where she's clearly better, like with climate change or the Supreme Court, or the fact that he wants to eliminate the FDA and the EPA, instead of hammering on policy, what Hillary did is she kind of ran this just vague campaign on cliches and platitudes of stronger together. Because
you also just described Trump's campaign, which is vagaries and the opposite of platitudes.
Look, all Hillary Clinton did, and by the way, we just spoke to Sam Cedar and we all agreed on the exact same thing. She didn't have to focus too much on policy or on policy at all, because as long as you attack his character, or as long as you sit back and you let him attack his own character or expose his own character, you're going to fare pretty well. And she is faring well tonight. But still, it's too close to comfort, according to the polls, if you ask me. Anyway, Kyle Kulinski, thank you so much for joining us. And good luck tonight. Hopefully we get decent results.
All right, you too, guys. Have a good one.
The Young Turks isn't just us. It's also you guys. You make this show possible, and we want to thank you for it, and we want to grow together. We want to be too strong. TYTnetwork.com/join. Let's do it.